Crews had to close this road after it partially collapsed. Nearby on Friday, a California Highway Patrol officer saved 3 people stuck in a car teetering on the edge of a cliff. Officers reminding people to drive only if necessary. Some areas already seeing their annual rainfall total with thousands of storms on the way. In Salinas, people are collecting sandbags to protect their homes.
Wow.
It can get nasty. It really can. Just days ago, washed out roads and levee breaks caused scenes like this. Officials concerned pressure on other levees could cause future breaks.
Wow.
In other parts of the state, prolonged power outages in Sacramento.
We're all doing the same thing, so we're just trying to kind of do it together and make the most of a dark situation.
And a winter weather alert in the Sierra. Drivers heading up for the holiday weekend stalled on I-80 near Lake Tahoe, Caltrans says, after multiple spinouts. The positive in all this moisture, California has recorded a 35% reduction in drought since December 20th. However, one scientist says we're not out of the woods yet.
It took us a long time to get into these severe drought conditions, so it's going to take more than, a good rainy season to get us out.
And Dana joins us now from California. So how long is the rain there going to last?
Well, Jose, this is the 9th storm to hit the Golden State since Christmas. A 10th is expected Sunday into Monday. Officials warn, pay attention to your surroundings and watch out for potential flooding and trees that could topple in the wind. Jose?
Dana Griffin, thank you. In the South, we're getting a closer look at the destruction from a series of deadly tornadoes that tore through Georgia and Alabama. We're also hearing from the harrowing stories of survival, including how a family of 12 huddled together to make it out alive. Morgan Chesky reports from Central Alabama.
Tonight, a deadly winter tornado spree, forcing families across the South to figure out what, if anything, they can save.
Pretty much, they're going to have to rebuild every house here.
Selma, Alabama, reeling from one of the state's 13 confirmed tornadoes. The mayor urging calm for those unable to get back to their homes.
Just know every directive that you're given is for your own safety.
In hard-hit Autauga County,
we can't wrap our head around it. We built this all ourselves.
the Desidere family, a dozen strong, with 5 foster children, relying on each other after a tornado struck their hand-built home. Mother Vicky and husband Philip huddling in a closet, holding 5 kids, 4 dogs, and each other. What were you saying to each other?
We were praying. We were screaming, Jesus, please just keep us alive.
You can literally feel the house come up in the air, and it like shook around, and you can feel it turning around and around, and it just set it back down.
Vicky capturing the aftermath on video in tears.
All that's really left is the closet, but we're all alive, except I don't know about the kids at school.
Prayers answered when those kids made it home safe and sound, including 10-year-old Penelope.
What did you tell your mom and dad when you finally got back home?
I gave everybody a hug and told them I loved them.
No, that's
Absolutely.
Because it was a miracle that they survived.
Amen.
Tonight, with their house all but gone, the family grateful for a neighbor providing a place to stay.
They have no idea.
Pretty special, huh?
Yep. And the outreach of people has been amazing. We have everything we need and want. It's been amazing.
An adversary has done this pertaining to Lucifer deceiving the people and thinking that global warming wasn't real, and now this stuff is caught up with us to the point that we're seeing all these irregular weather patterns.
Just in the last 48 hours, Governor Kay Ivey says she did speak with President Biden and is confident that he will grant her disaster declaration, which will bring much-needed federal resources to this tornado-stricken area. Jose?
Morgan Chesky, thank you. We have breaking news overseas tonight in Ukraine. At least 12 people were killed and a dozen children are among the injured following a new round of Russian missile attacks.
If we're not being ravaged one way, we're being ravaged another. If we're not being ravaged by sicknesses and COVID and high prices pertaining to fuel prices and food prices, we're getting ravaged by somebody like this that's basically trying to blow up the world, or we're getting ravaged by all kinds of forces of nature. If we're not being attacked And I keep saying that. We are under attack. It is a spiritual invasion that has fallen upon to the world right now, unlike anything that we could ever begin to imagine.
Civilian infrastructure. This new video shot in early January shows Russian mercenaries coming under Ukrainian artillery and machine gun fire. Yesterday, Russia said it's finally taken the Ukrainian town of Soledar. But Ukraine's military says the salt mining town still hasn't fallen. We'll never give up, this soldier said. The damage seen on these
Look at that, look at that.
Today, Britain became the first country to announce it will give Western battle tanks to Ukraine as Russian assaults show no sign of relenting.
And Matt joins us now. Matt, you mentioned that the UK is the first country to give Ukraine Western battle tanks. Is the US going to follow suit?
That's unclear. Till now, it's been a bridge too far for the Biden administration, and the American M1 Abrams tank is more difficult to maintain and operate than its British and German counterparts. Jose?
Matt Bradley in Vinnytsia, Ukraine. Thank you. Up next, the billion-dollar mystery. Who in this small town in Maine won last night's massive jackpot?
What we're seeing is just a radical weather, a radical people, a radical changes. You know, going from 2 days before Christmas, 7 below, and then right around the first of the year in the 60s, we're seeing all these outbreaks of tornadoes that now I think this has occurred now twice this winter, and we're not nowhere near through the winter. As a matter of fact, right now, we should be going through the latest pattern. We should be going through the worst part of our winter right here towards it being, 17, 12 above zero in the daytime, maybe get up to, 12 above zero in the daytime, possibly getting up to like 35, 42, 43. And we're not seeing that. We're swaying from one direction to another, going from one extreme to another. But yet now we still got climate deniers, and we still got people that don't think this is real. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. In what type of, I'm going to call it a bewitching. The world has been bewitched in thinking that everything was hunky-dory and that everything was going to go back to being normal like it was pre-COVID. And they're having places right now that's breaking out in some areas that was actually worse or just as bad as what it was whenever COVID first broke out. Just got off the phone a while ago with my cousin, and one of her daughters is out in Yuma, Arizona, and they're all so sick down there that they can't even hardly get out of bed, and they've coughed so much that their rib cages feels like that the rib cage is falling in or caving in. So it's just it's an ongoing being ravaged again and again and again.
Brakes and swerves, mimicking real driving safely.
So you can go ahead and hop in, and then I'll show you the controls real quick.
Today, I'm the test driver.
Are you ready to drive?
I am. Oh. As I hit the road, researchers asked me to enter my destination in the navigation system.
Navigate to 401 West Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway.
Look at this. My eyes veering off the road for more than 30 seconds, causing me to veer into another lane. You can see me cross over the dotted line.
Oh, did I get there? No.
A typo in the address, my eyes once again moving from the road to the screen as I try to get to where I'm going.
Using the tablet, navigate to NADS.
Here you see my eyes were off the road and my speed dropped more than 5 miles per hour.
And we're off to NADS.
As we drive, we are constantly adjusting our lane position. Very unconsciously, we can drive. But as soon as you begin to look away the road, that begins to break down and you drift out of your lane, much like Dasha did in her drive.
Outside the simulator, Dan McGeehee, who oversees research here, gave me what should be an easy challenge.
And, we need you to turn the fan up to defog the windows.
But all knobs and buttons are replaced by the screen.
Maybe I go here?
Yeah, well, that's the wrong one.
Nope. Okay. Oh gosh. Something's happening. Okay.
So.
And here are the defrosters.
I finally found it, but my eyes were off the road for nearly 20 seconds. A study conducted by AAA in 2017 found that when they tested 30 different car make and models with built-in touchscreen features, all 30 were found to be dangerously distracting, with some drivers having to take their eyes off the road for as long as 40 seconds.
We can look away from the road for roughly 1 3/4 of a second before our car begins to deviate of the lane.
But researchers believe that whatever dangers touchscreens present are significantly less than when using a cell phone while driving. Here's me in the same simulator trying to navigate using a smartphone.
In Cedar Rapids, we're going to Kirkwood Community College. All right, already swerving. How did my interaction with the cell phone compare to the touchscreen?
Right, because you had a bigger target, your glances down and up were much shorter than you were with the cell phone.
Experts say the safest way to drive is to punch in any information while parked or use voice commands.
Navigate to Brooklyn, Iowa.
Ways to stay safe as car technology accelerates into the future. Dasha Burns, Iowa City, Iowa.
When we come back, reaching for the skies, the man who went from ramp agent to piloting the plane, the inspiring way he achieved his dream.
If you're anything like me.
See, it's actually counterproductive whenever it comes to the safety features that we're supposed to be engaging into with our automobiles, that these car manufacturers now are trying to cause everybody to become adjusted to, and they've really cracked down in this particular area towards people talking on their cell phones while driving down the road or texting. And I know that it was that way whenever I was out in California in 2012. No, wait a minute. It wasn't 2012. Maybe it was 2012. I get my dates sometimes mixed up, but you would think, and I agree that being able to do things with a bigger screen has to be better than a smaller screen. But the bottom line is this:
humidity inside and the hardware operating, those temperatures would be in an area that would be not healthy for the crew.
So if this crew needed to evacuate the space station and the damaged spacecraft was their only option, how would they navigate these hazards?
Well, the spacecraft does have a number of redundant systems in it. So, even if the main flight computers were to be degraded, there's still down mode options, what we call down mode options, where they could probably get back through the atmosphere safely. You don't want to have to do this, but if push came to shove and the station was in a real state where you had to evacuate, I think you would try to evacuate. It'd be the lesser of two evils, if you would. No doubt they would be overheated and very warm, uncomfortable, but the bigger issue, of course, the electronics inside of that spacecraft. But the spacecraft is pretty robust, and my guess is that it would actually make it back down and the crew would be safe, although pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, pretty uncomfortable to say the least. So we know that leaks can happen in space, but how common are the more significant leaks like the one that we saw in the damaged spacecraft?
This is a first. We worry about micrometeoroid damage. We've seen it before on spacecraft. We've seen it before on satellites. And the problem, of course, continues to manifest and perhaps even to increase. So we had what we call an unlucky strike in the area of the radiator, caused damage to the tubing, which houses some of the coolant, which caused it all to leak. And so that's why we've got this problem with this spacecraft. I know over the last few weeks, the tests have been done, closing up the hatches to see how hot it's going to get in that spacecraft. And that's what made the engineers uncomfortable, is that the temperature inside did rise pretty high, both for the crew, but also for the electronics.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about micrometeorites. I mean, how concerning are they? What exactly is it?
Sure, micrometeoroids are the biggest worry we have for both spacecraft with crew on board and also for satellites. And basically, it's kind of this what we call generically space junk that's traveling around. Some of it is natural, small bits of of rock just naturally out there that are flying around at tens of thousands of miles an hour, and most of them like the size of a grain of sand, and they're not too big of a worry. But then there are the man-made pieces, the human-caused junk from spent booster rockets, pieces falling off of satellites and spacecraft, and the odd anti-satellite weapon test, that spreads debris. And so this stuff stays up there a while, depending on its mass and altitude and speed and all those things. But that is the biggest concern for all spacecraft. That's why all spacecraft have shielding, some shielding, including the International Space Station. But you can't stop everything, so we are worried about it.
Yeah, and as the commander of ISS, space debris must be a huge concern. We know the space station had to move its orbit several times because of debris. What do you see as the best long-term solution for this?
Well, the long-term solution, new satellite makers are making their satellites smarter, especially the ones in low Earth orbit. They are being designed to actually deorbit themselves in a controlled manner with remaining fuel instead of just being derelicts up there floating around out of control. And so, in other words, they're being brought down.
Look at all that. We as civilians don't realize what all's going on above our heads, but the dangers are only increasing on a day-to-day level the more technology advances, with not only the automobiles towards people driving, but stuff floating around in space that's going to bump into one another that eventually is going to fall out of space and wind up in somebody's backyard, or possibly on their house, or come crashing down on top of them driving down the road. We're only setting ourselves up for a major catastrophe by becoming this dependent on all this technology, that you take just one major direct hit with the solar flare that's going to basically, I'm going to say, cripple at least 20 to 22, maybe 25% of whatever side that sun rays bombards the atmosphere and comes into the earth at. And every one of those little dots that you're looking at right there could actually fall out of the sky simultaneously at the same time. Once all their batteries and once all their electronics is burnt out and there's no controlling that particular satellite, who knows where to go? It may stay up in space, but then again, it may fall. I know this, automobiles are gauged at about 137 to 142 degrees, that once you come past 142 degrees in most automobiles, you stand a chance towards damaging the computer and damaging various components that helps the automobile to run properly. I'm pretty sure that their stuff up there in space is probably similar. I'm pretty sure that they have some sort of a limit towards how hot that can be, too hot to the point that it starts damaging components and burning up wires and causing all other kinds of problems. And of course, if we was to ever get hit with a direct sun, and the sun, believe it or not, for the past few months has actually been acting strangely weirder than what it ordinarily does. The sun automatically has these big explosions. And whenever I say an explosion, I'm talking about an explosion almost the size of Earth that comes from basically a burning star that's like 1,000 times bigger than the Earth. And they have noticed more activity out of the sun towards the sun, doing more explosions on or in itself through various satellites. And it's just a matter of time before we're going to be hit by a direct sun flare. And whenever we do, God only knows what kind of damage that it's going to cause. It could actually throw a great deal of the people off into some sort of like the Dark Ages, like some sort of primitive Dark Ages period, because we got a lot of satellites now that actually help cities control their red lights, control their water supply, control this, control that. And if you was to knock out their grid or knock out the satellite that controls the grid, you're going to knock out everything that goes on in that particular city. In addition to, if the sun flare is strong enough and it damages everything that's on the outer layers of the atmosphere, once it becomes into the atmosphere, it could have long-term effects pertaining to everything that goes on down here. Airplanes falling out of the sky, automobiles suddenly just cutting off. A lot of your home units now have some sort of form of technology in them. All that could be disconnected immediately or cut off. I mean, I could go on and on and on towards the calamity that one major solar flare. And we've been very, very fortunate throughout the 20th, 21st century that we haven't been bombarded by a major sun flare, in addition to what the heck would happen if there was ever a major meteor that would hit the planet, let's say the size of Texas, that would come into our atmosphere, that would probably put planet Earth off into an extinct state, to where we would actually the sun basically would no longer be able to distribute its heat down to the planet Earth, because all the radiation and all the smoke and all the dust and everything would go up into the upper atmosphere, and it would basically turn the planet Earth into a winter type substance for a while people was literally freezing to death, because you know good and well it's going to affect the power grid supply. That's one of the reasons why that I put out the message that I put out in 2017, right up here in Paducah, Kentucky, that I got accused of, towards thinking that I was going to create some sort of electrical disturbance by blowing up the Kentucky Dam. Because of all the technology out there, it's just a matter of time before we have a major event happen to the planet. We're already having different events like happen right now in California, all the storms, various, like the cold snap, the freeze that happened, the quick freeze that happened right before Christmas, of everybody going down to like 6 or 7 below in this area. I don't know how many schools and different businesses around here that had to fix a lot of pipes. Some of the pipes was above, that caused a lot of damage with the school system. They couldn't open up the schools in Troy, Tennessee and other areas because it done so much damage that they couldn't bring the children in there. I mean, we are becoming more and more vulnerable every day. And these are the things that I believe that Jesus was talking about, or the Holy Spirit was talking about, of the first part of Revelations, where it talks about that I will not put upon thee none other burden, hold fast till I come. Those who are living here upon to the planet are going to go through severe sufferings because of what mankind has done to our planet in draining all the precious natural resources out of the ground, that is now destabilizing basically the heat shield that's allowing for all the heat to escape out to the outer layers of the earth. That's basically all the volcanoes. It's warming up the oceans. And I didn't know this, that we got icebergs that goes down into the ocean like a mile, some of them even 2 miles, that as the water is steadily warming up, the water is steadily melting. Over in Russia, they have these big holes that's the size of basically a city block, that they can't even hardly find the bottom down to, that suddenly all of a sudden these holes are erupting and all this natural gas is coming out of these holes. I know that the thermofrost over in Russia, I mean, not Russia, but Alaska, that's been giving the Alaskan people over there a lot of trouble, pertaining to foundations on homes basically giving way, roads sinking, bridges falling in. We're we're doing this to ourselves. And I know that it's the oil, petroleum typhoons that have allowed for this to happen. But my main concept on who has blinded everybody on the planet and deceived us was the Luciferian Lucifer that now is over in Saudi Arabia, the one that masterminded 9/11 and killed the journalist and is acting like goody-goody two-shoes, and the whole time they know just exactly who they are and what they are towards them being a demonic source. And until the world wakes up to that, you're going to see more and more irregular weather phenomenons. It's going to happen. You're going to see more and more occurrences pertaining to famines and pestilences and diseases and all other kinds of problems. Why? Because of what didn't happen that should have happened in the late 80s in Ronald Reagan's administration that would have put us into a trajectory towards a revival, that would have put us off into a trajectory towards being able to do something with climate, global warming, that now we're 30-something years in behind, and everybody's trying to backpedal. And one of the main problems that I'm hearing in this particular area, the reason why that there's so many shortages on so much stuff, I mean, you can't even go to a body shop or a mechanic shop without hearing them talk about all these different delays towards not being able to get automobile parts. And I'm pretty sure it's probably that way with the plumbing. I'm pretty sure it's probably that way with the electronics. I'm pretty sure it's that way with any and everything else pertaining to supplies, is because of the labor issues that people don't want to work. People have become lazy. They have become very displacent to the point that now they don't want to, they'd rather sit around and draw a check than they would to work for it. I've never seen a society turn out to be like it is right now. And believe it or not, it's really scary because you don't know from one day to another towards what kind of calamity that's going to hit us, regardless whether it be a homegrown terrorist, an international terrorist, rather than it's going to be stupidity, kind of like what happened with the airline industry that's caused this total chaos throughout the holidays this year, or stupidity towards not being able to deal with the COVID properly, towards shutting down the airline industry, or at least part of the airline industry going over into China once we realized that the disease, or that the crud was coming from over in that area. There's just so many mismanaged deals going on right now, even with our own home politics here in Washington, D.C., finding more and more top secret records with President Biden, the pot trying to call the kettle black towards blaming President Trump with all his secret files. And now we're finding out that this president that was the vice president that had all these secret files over in his properties, is just a chaotic, unordinary circumstances that's going on all over the planet. And until we go back to the altar, just like I was talking to my cousin a while ago, and until we go back and we reconform our way of thinking and we repent of this sinful state that we're in right now, things is only going to desperately get worse and worse and worse. And it's really sad. I mean, this is the first that I've heard about this international space station that has received this type of damage. And believe it or not, damage to a spacecraft like this towards major leaks could actually be detrimental to the people that's on that. I don't know. This is the first that I've heard anything of it.
Bring themselves down in a controlled manner, making sure that they burn up in the atmosphere, and anything that survives doesn't stays away from major cities and shipping lanes and things like that. So that's part of the solution. There have been different proposals of how to clean up space junk. Frankly, none of them, to me, have been really very viable. To
me, this is all part of the depths of Satan that it talks about in Revelations. For those who have not known the depths of Satan, hold fast till I come. For I will not put upon thee none other burden. Hold fast till I come. It keeps repeating that again and again and again. Again and again and again. For I will not put upon thee none other burden. Hold fast till I come. In other words, we're now seeing the destruction of man and the destruction of this planet right in front of our very eyes. And I don't know that we can crawfish. I don't know that we can back paddle enough to make up for all this lost time. We're talking about 30-something years of trying to reflect of where we need to be, where we're not. And to get the world to boot up like that, to go on warp speed, kind of like Star Trek, for everybody to be thinking the same thoughts. I mean, we can't even get China to even sit down and talk about global warming right now, or climate change catastrophes that's happening. I don't know if they're just blind. I don't know if they just don't want to cooperate. Now, they may have changed. I don't know. But, I mean, I know that they've been one of the anti-climate deniers, or they've been one of the climate deniers all along towards being anti-global warming because of all the carbon dioxide and all the plants that they're pumping bad things up into the atmosphere. You know, I was seeing pictures a while ago. I didn't know that this actually occurred. I mean, I knew that the volcano occurred over in Hawaii, which is supposed to be one of the biggest volcanoes on the planet, active volcanoes. And according to what I looked at, it's been several years since this volcano has erupted, but it was putting out so much volume over in Hawaii that whenever it got dark, they literally was scared that the second coming of Christ was at hand, because it becomes so luminous of their sky turning solid red, ominous, to the point that it was frightening. It was frightening people. They didn't know what to become of it over in Hawaii, over in the island areas. Once more, these are all signs that Jesus talked about, that we will see things up into the earth and things up into the heavens such as mankind has never seen before. These are all biblical Bible prophecies coming true.
Very viable, but you know, there's the stuff.
Look at all the debris. Look at all the debris. Now, I don't know if they're dramatizing that a little bit towards making it look as bad as what it looks, but you just take just this one little bitty spot. I don't know. Let's say from here to here of what we're looking at right there. You're probably looking at over 100 different satellites that's floating around. And that's probably 1,000 miles. I'm estimating that's probably right around 1,000 miles from here to here. 100 different satellites at any given day or night that are over your head within 1,000-mile radius. You got 100 different satellites up there that's floating around, that one of them could pop out of the sky, or a solar flare hit, or any of the above could happen. As I said, we're setting ourselves up for a major catastrophe. And at any given time, this could be apocalyptic in what could occur in regards towards us becoming so reliant upon all this technology. Just like the woman trying to drive the car. I mean, that's the reason why that they give out tickets, was because of distractions. And it doesn't matter if you're trying to operate your telephone, or you're eating a cheeseburger, or you're trying to paint your nails, or put on clothes going down the road. It's a distraction. And why these manufacturers, I guess in one way they probably realize, well, they're not going to stop using their phones, so let's try to help them out towards putting in these bigger screens. That way maybe they can do things hands-free that way. It's just unbelievable at how that we have been bombarded just within the past 30 plus years of all this high-tech digital smartphone artificial intelligence. And it's got to the point that you can't even hardly walk out of the house without even going to a gas pump somewhere and knowing how to read and operate and dissect the computer modules that's controlling the gas station pumps, that if you don't know how to do that properly, you probably ain't going to get gas. We are living in a high-tech society to the point that the elderly, people that's in their 80s, people that's in their 70s, and even people in their 60s, and a whole lot of people in their 50s are overwhelmed by all this. They just can't relate towards how it reacts and how it responds. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was scared to death of all this computer software and smartphone technology whenever it first come out. It wasn't until I moved back to Tennessee in 2014, and it was 2015 whenever I decided for the first time to buy into smartphone technology. And my brother and I bought the exact same phone from the exact same company. I was in Paducah, Kentucky. He was in Jackson, Tennessee on Black Friday, and we had no earthly idea towards what one another was doing. We just done it simultaneously, and come to find out that afternoon, he had got hooked up to smartphone. I got hooked up to smartphone. And since then, it has been an ongoing learning curve for the past 5 to 7 years, basically me trying to adapt and knowing what to do, how to do. You know, you put your finger on it, you hold it, you tap it twice, you hold it and you move it. All these different categories pertaining to all these different phones all have different ways of operating the system. And it's been a mind-blowing event for me because I haven't been used to using a great deal of brain energy. And since I've come back to Tennessee with using all these telephones and putting out all these videos and stuff, there's been days that I thought my freaking head was going to explode. It will literally drive you off into a migraine if you don't watch towards how that it can bog you down, and it would damage your eyesight, and it would just basically imprison you to the point that you become addicted to this stuff. I mean, it's very, very addictive, and that's the reason why it's created. It's created to be addictive, just like a drug, just like something else in life that we've become accustomed towards doing, like sugar. It's very, very addictive, high-tech technology. But one day all this stuff is going to wind up backfiring on us. And whenever it does, it's going to be total freaking chaos until we figure out a game plan towards how we're going to be able to overwhelm ourselves in getting back to a smooth way of life.
It's owned by and large, but it takes time. And the problem is, of course, if you keep generating more, and hopefully more people will adopt kind of these smart designs, then hopefully we can reduce the total amount of stuff up there.
We hope so. Leroy Chow, great to see you. Thank you for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Junk debris.
Tonight, California is reeling from another round of severe weather today. Some 25 million people are under flood watches. And minutes ago, we learned that mandatory evacuations have been ordered for San Benito County in the Central Coast region. Much of the state is saturated from so-called atmospheric river storms that have dumped huge amounts of rain since late December. CNN's Natasha Chin is in Fairfax, California, that is north of San Francisco. So bring us up to speed. What's going on there?
Well, Pamela, there's been storm after storm after storm in the last couple of weeks, starting from New Year's Eve weekend. And while the rain that we're seeing falling right now may not be as much as some of those previous storms, like you mentioned, the ground is already so saturated, the river's so saturated, so the water really has nowhere else to go. And that causes things like mudslides. One mudslide that crashed into the back of this apartment complex. That's why you see yellow tape up right now. Luckily, the people inside are okay, but 19 people had to be evacuated. Some of the other dangerous situations that we're learning about just this afternoon, the Orange County Fire Authority shared this amazing video.
All this is straining the resources of the Homo sapiens. regardless whether it's a dry spell towards damaging the crops pertaining to droughts, regardless whether it's too much rain, not enough rain. Mother Nature has suddenly turned on society to the degree that the forces of nature is no longer cooperating with humanity. And it talks about these things in the Bible, that whenever you shall see these things starting to occur, woe, woe, woe be unto the inhabitants here upon to the planet. Now, we're just in the first woe. This is just the first woe. So can you only imagine what's going to happen during the opening of the second seal pertaining to the second woe, and then the third woe, and then the fourth woe, and then as you go off into the sixth and seventh seal, where you start seeing other factors that's going to come into play. It's going to be unbelievable because of the Luciferian Lucifer that has blinded so many people that have caused this type of irreversible damage to our planet and to ourselves. We have been exposed to the ways of sin on one level or one factor or another, even to the point of what kind of vehicle that we drive and what type of environment that we have to correspond with. This has all been dumped into our laps for the past, I'm thinking around 20 and 10 is whenever it sure enough got bad.
Classified document trouble means for his political future. Will he run for re-election? How did it impact him?
All right, we're going to change channels here off of this CNN right here. We're going to go to something real quick because I'm curious about this NASA deal. And let's go over to NASA real quick. NASA right there, and see if they're talking about the same thing. Because this is the first I've heard about this.
It's important because if we cannot get the historical observations
This
in our
must be
model, then we're not so certain
commercial or something.
whether our climate projections are correct.
When the planes aren't flying, the science teams and flight crews take turns visiting local schools, from elementary up through university.
Elementary school students can understand remarkably complex.
Well, they're not talking about what I'm thinking about they're talking about. I figured that would be on the main topic right there. Let's see what's going on here real quick.
100% clear skin.
Well, we got another commercial. Let's go right here for a second.
It's really the key to keeping it going. 724 people originally, some rich kids from Boston, some poor kids from Boston. You put them together. It's expanded with their kids and their spouses to over 2,000, but 60 originals are still alive. What are some of the conclusions that you've come to that has happiness? Does money buy you happiness?
No.
No, money doesn't buy you happiness, but we came to a conclusion that surprised us. It was that the people who had the best, warmest connections with other people were not only happier, they stayed healthier. Their bodies stayed healthier and their brains stayed healthier as they went through their lives.
So you had some of the poor kids got rich and some of the other kids lost everything.
I think the key to happiness is having a sound relationship with the Heavenly Father towards your spirit being in, I'm going to use the word pairing, that your soul or your spirit is pairing with the Holy Spirit, and that you are at peace of mind, you have a peace of heart, you don't have a lot of contentment pertaining to guilt, shame, etc. And I think that is one of the key elements, in addition to the Holy Spirit itself giving you the life to be able to overcome all these obstacles in the world. I think that's the key element to happiness. And if you don't have God, odds are you're not a happy individual. You can try to pay your way through, and temporarily you may succeed for a while, but you're probably only fooling yourself, and the odds are you're going to be just as miserable with the money as you are without. if not even more so.
He's the co-author of The Good.
Let's go back over here real quick.
And paralyzed and unable to speak.
I don't know what that's about, but that don't look like that's happening right now. Let's go back to this real quick.
Provincial Minister of Narendra Modi behind bars for extrajudicial murder of Muslims. I've been calling out his silence on the 2002 genocide of Muslims when he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat till the present day, when as the Prime Minister of India, he has looked away from the attack on minorities in India every day.
You know, we have countries, especially large superseding countries, superpowers, that are literally imploding right now up onto itself. The smaller countries have already imploded to a great deal of degree, to the point that supply chain issues and having to ration this and ration that. And I've never seen anything like this ever has occurred on the planet that we know of, that we can monitor today, like we couldn't had 25, 50, 100 years ago. We knew that things was going on 100 years ago, regardless whether it was the Spanish flu or whatever, but we didn't feel the impact of it like we do today because of media, satellites, social media platform. I think it was in Libya where they had the big explosion. That country has been in total turmoil since then. There's other countries since COVID has hit that has just absolutely left people breathless in how that they are performing their duties to their citizens.
It's the lives of the government and the others that you have, the independent journalists. Some of the most well-known journalists in India right now are freelance journalists because they're not employed by these organizations, and if they are, then they're asked to speak the language of the owners and the government by extension.
How concerned are you about what is to come next? I mean, how have you managed to continue your work in the face of everything you've experienced over the last few years?
Well, Eamon, I've not been able to do much of my reportage because I'm mostly drowning in paperwork. At this point of time, while I'm talking to you, I'm dealing with about 5 different sets of lawyers. I have to appear on the 23rd for a summons that has been issued to me by a court for an article that I wrote in 2009 about Hindu nationalism and about the terror attacks in India. I'm appearing in another court for an appearance on a BBC show on the hijab ban in India. I'm facing money laundering charges, tax evasion. I'm facing another case about a tweet of mine which allegedly promoted communal animosity between Hindus and Muslims in India. So right now, as I talk to you, I'm drowning in paperwork. I really wish I can get a breather to get back to doing what I do best, is to speak about what's happening in India towards marginalized, towards privileged. And that's, unfortunately, I've been stopped from doing right now. And that's what their government has been successful. When they're not throwing you behind bars, when journalists are not getting killed, they get killed by 1,000 cuts while they're free.
Wow.
This is a situation that is, I would say, is not getting enough attention here in the United States. What do you believe the U.S. should be doing more of to change the course of what is happening, either in India, in your case specifically? You had the former Democratic Senator Pat Leahy speak out last month about this harassment and sham trial that you are facing. He is unfortunately no longer in office, but what would you want to see the U.S. doing to help?
Well, I think at this point of time, US and other democracies in the world need to speak louder for press freedom. And it should just not be a performative thing. It should just not be like a lip service to free press and journalism. But the world should understand if the world's largest democracy, that's India, goes down under, ripples will be felt across the world. The US or other countries, for that matter, should not look at India just as a strategic ally vis-a-vis Russia or China. It needs to look at India, a country of 1.3 billion people, where so many of us who are trying to bear witness or trying to tell stories about India are being silenced with impunity. So what we are, the world watches, dictators watch each other. They learn from each other's playbook. So if we are silenced with impunity, it will have repercussions for journalists across the world. So the world needs to speak up more than ever before. in solidarity with each one of us, especially those who do not have my privilege.
Rana Ayub, we wish you the best of luck as you face these challenges. We certainly are supporters of press freedom and do anything we can to help promote the freedom of the press anywhere in the world. Washington Post opinion contributor Rana Ayub, thank you so much for making time for us tonight. I greatly appreciate it. Next, we're going to change gears. There is some good news here at home for Americans with student debt. We're going to tell you about that next.
All right, let's pass on here for a second. I didn't realize all that was going on once more. As things get tighter, as things get crippling in normalcy ways, you're going to see countries that said that they was a free, fair, open democracy actually come down on their own citizens based around the hases and the has-nots, based around those that ain't willing to share with the has-nots, and those that already are on the poor side towards being the has-nots are even going to lose out that much more quicker towards the hases. It's what we're seeing in the Bible pertaining to it being as the noise of thunder. That's exactly what it meant whenever one of the beasts in heaven come to the edge of the throne room and looked down and said, "Come and see," for it was as the noise of thunder. Didn't say it was thunder, it was as thunder. One of God's beasts in the throne room of God said, "Look at this and listen to this." And to me, it's only intensifying. Instead of it getting less noisier, it's actually becoming more noisier. And if it ain't happening over here in America, it's happening in some other country, in some other area pertaining to other unforeseen circumstances.
Lung cancer, and at his funeral, well, we had a flash.
It's almost like it's too much information. It's become overwhelming.
2022 E3 will fly between the two constellations. Bring a pair of binoculars or a telescope. The comet might become visible to the naked eye as it approaches our planet in early February. However, a telescope can help you locate the comet. Once you find it, enjoy its wonders as it sails the cosmos. Be sure to monitor the weather conditions in your area if you plan to hunt for the comet. You can check out the latest cloud forecast by visiting AccuWeather.com or by downloading the AccuWeather app. Reporting for AccuWeather, I'm Jeff Cornish.
And the skies become a bit cloudy then for our Martin Luther King holiday, especially in the central U.S. where another storm's working through, and the western U.S. where we have a lot of wet weather working in. Eventually that will prove severe weather in the south in the middle of next week.
When you have the Empower card, you don't have to make so many tough.
All right, let's go back to NASA real quick and see if they're showing that again. That was really, really alarming. That was alarming. No, they're still not on that. That was the first I've heard anything about that. God, that was so alarming. Let me see here. Go to that right there again. No, let's go to this again.
This is.
Well, that was something. What was that?
Pots were won on that day. Michigan coming in especially lucky.
This is a company that's transformed the world of photography.
I think this is going to replace the Tom Collins
but Sean,
and the Autopilot.
See, and these people are on news channels, and they're up there fooling around the way that they are. It's actually an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to what our news is supposed to be categorized as being news that is no longer effectively.
It belongs to the brave. The Challenger crew was pulling us into the future, and we'll continue to follow them.
On the evening of January 30th, 1968, at the height of the war in Vietnam, North Vietnamese forces launched a coordinated attack across South Vietnam known as the Tet Offensive. The U.S. repelled the assault at the cost of heavy losses in both men and public support for the ongoing war. And that's a look at what happened this month in history. American.
All right, let's go on here.
Of the institution of civil societies. This goes all the way back to Tocqueville. He noticed the way American democracy really does depend on flourishing institutions of civil society. The market can't do it. Often the market will harm if it's unleashed. Market forces will give you stuff that will undermine your children's formation. We can see that. Well, Gene's talking a little bit about that. So you can't rely on the market to do that work. The market can do many wonderful things. I'm pro-market. But it can't do that. And it's got to be checked when it's undermining that. Same with the government. Government does a lot of harm, even when it comes to moral formation. It certainly can't substitute for the family, or the church, or coach, or pastor, or grandma and grandpa. And same with the legal system. All of those systems depend on there being a large number of citizens who have civic virtue.
Order.
We're not going to preserve this experiment without civic virtue.
Order.
They rely on it, but they can't produce it. Business corporations rely on employees who will show up at work on time,
Order.
not drunk, not on drugs, do their work, do a good job, not embezzle, provide honest work for honest pay, but they can't produce those things. Legal system depends on jurors who will be honest, not corrupt, actually live by the law. They
Order.
can't order that there be such people. Political system can't do it. If it's going to be done, it's going to be by civil society. So we've got to pay far more attention than we have.
It's got to be done from within. Even Christ said, do not try to clean the cup from the outside in, but rather clean the cup from the inside out. And if we don't have a spiritual movement here in America, if we don't have a spiritual movement on the planet, I'm just afraid that within the next 5 to 7 years from now, the consequences are going to be dire towards what people are fixing to have to face off on pertaining to our way of life, pertaining to complications, pertaining to high extreme prices, pertaining to shortages, pertaining to all the above. We are heading down a slippery slope right now towards heading off into great tribulation. And if you can't see that and understand that, then obviously there's something wrong with your intellect.
You know, they're trying to do that right now, this week. No, no, and no. See, these are the vultures, and they have had a horrendous, outsized impact on ruining and making your life worse, and they've done this for generations. That is de facto taxation without representation. Somewhere in a grave, somewhere in the United Kingdom, King George's ghost is laughing hysterically. This is all possible because of the swamp cabal, and they're in charge of making all these decisions for us. And we've seen how well that works out. Our country is in the gutter. Our government sent another $100 billion to protect Ukraine's borders, not ours. You can't afford a box of cereal or a carton of eggs, and it's because the establishment doesn't care about you. It's self-serving. And the swamp runs very, very deep. And that's why the Speaker's vote in the House was so critical. In its own right, it was an act of revolution. It was an act of rebellion of we the people against the swamp. The House of Representatives, known as the People's House, was supposed to be the most democratic body and the direct, responsive body to the American people. Their votes are allocated via population. Instead, over the reign of entrenched Democrat and Republican leaders over the past few decades, the House fell to lifelong politicians, lobbyists, special interests, totally indifferent to the plight of real Americans. They're invertebrate in their fighting nature against the Marxists at our door, and in the case of January 6th, they're literally opening doors altogether. The machine is corrosive and grinding. We send our newly minted, elected conservative Republicans. These officials go to Washington, D.C. as prized red meat sticks, but they get shoved into the meat grinder all the same, and they all turn into cheap ground beef, dog food, political dog food. So Trump ran against this rot that affected both Republican and Democrat parties, and he inspired a new generation to fight against this rot, against the swamp, a wrench in the machine, so to speak. Our founding fathers always intended it this way. The Declaration of Independence reads, whenever any form of government becomes destructive, it is the right of the American people to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government. The GOP speakership fight was less of a fight against one man and more of a fight against a corruptible, contemptible machine, that destroys all good men. The 20 members who held up the leadership vote into the small hours.
What you're basically listening to is a plotted coup on TV, some sort of national TV. I don't know who this network is. Newsmax. Talking about basically taking all these people that's in power and dismantling them and starting a brand new system, a brand new government. I just have never seen things this far out of focus towards it being abnormal. I can remember a lot of stuff going on the news with Nixon, Watergate, Black, whatever that was called, Blackgate or something like that. I've seen a lot of irregularities. Even 9/11, that was a bad deal.
The folks on Long Island have been really
I can
clear
remember
in the last,
bits and pieces and parts of the Vietnam War. That was a big deal. I can remember the impeachment of Nixon. I remember, parts of the assassination of JFK, this is the holiday for him. I remember very, very little of JFK. I remember more of Martin Luther King, especially with the rioting and stuff that went on afterwards. But it's, we have seen events come and go. But what's happening and what has been happening since January the 6th and COVID, and now the war in Ukraine, and now top it off with $30+ trillion and the drug culture and the Mexicans illegal culture coming over to America, and all our jails being full and etc. I have never seen it top the irregularities of what society is pumping out and putting out today to the global world. I've never seen it like this. And to be quite honest with you, it's actually scary. Especially if you don't have some sort of a bonding, lasting relationship and knowing where you're going to go after this plaguing society basically comes to its own Achilles heel. I really don't see how people can wake up in the mornings and have peace within their own heart if they don't have a relationship with the Lord. That's just my opinion. I want to thank everybody for listening. Good luck to each and every one of us. God bless America. God bless our endeavors. I hope I haven't bored you with going to so many different topics and so many different subject matters towards basically news surfing on the TV. I know a lot of people don't get TV. They don't get these type of channels that I can get. A lot of people around here are very, very poor. Some of them can barely get the standard free channels of channel 6, 12, and 7. 11, and maybe 3 or 4 others that they can get for free airwave TV. So because I can get different types of information out there to the general public, along with my own personal message that God has given unto me to give to other people, it ain't actually my message, it's God's message. I make these videos and I put them out to society, and hopefully it will be able to help somebody.
President Biden's residence, what is your reaction to this latest discovery, and how do you think the administration has been handling this issue? Our reporting at NBC suggests there's some frustration among Democrats for the way the administration has been forthcoming and transparent, or lack thereof, when it comes to this issue.
I just want to say shalom, God bless, and good luck to all of us.